How to disarm those who don't respect you. Win without reacting. You think it starts when they insult you, but it doesn't. It begins long before the words, before the smirk, before the dismissal, before the passive jab disguised as humor. It begins in the silence, in the moment someone tests the borders of your self-respect just to see what you'll do. And most people, unaware, walk straight into the trap. They flinch, they defend, they bite the bait. Not because they are weak, but because they never knew it was a game. This is the game you didn't know you were playing, one where the rules are hidden, but the cost is real. And the first rule is this: whoever reacts loses, not visibly, not immediately, but psychologically. Because when someone can make you raise your voice, lose your composure, explain yourself when you didn't need to, they've already won. They've moved you, and to move you is to control you. So they prod. Not with fists, but with tone, with subtle acts of disregard, a delay in response, a change in energy, an unnecessary interruption. It's small, it's quiet, but it's strategic, and it works, because you want to be respected, you want fairness, you want things to make sense, and they don't. So you try to force clarity, demand balance, prove your worth, and in that, you lose the one thing they couldn't touch until you gave it away, your center. You begin to argue your value instead of embody it. You respond to what shouldn't deserve an answer. You explain things to people who are not interested in understanding, and slowly, your energy starts to revolve around their gravity. Their game becomes your reality. Their disrespect becomes your agenda. And they remain still, watching you react, watching you spend yourself. That's how the game works. They don't have to beat you. They only have to distract you from yourself. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. The game collapses when you don't play. When the bait isn't taken, the trap resets. When the target stays unmoved, the shooter loses aim. It's not silence that disarms them. It's presence, controlled, rooted. A presence that says, I saw what you did, and I decided it's not worth my energy. That is what power looks like. Not loud, not theatrical, just unshakable. You must see every act of disrespect not as an insult to respond to, but as a move to study. Disrespect is often a projection, not a declaration of truth, but a confession of weakness. So when someone throws it at you and you flinch, you confirm it. You validate their view. But when you remain still, when your eyes hold no tremble, when your breath doesn't shift, you reverse the power. You make them face their own noise. That's when it turns on them. That's when the game resets. Most people fight to be heard, but few fight to stay whole, and that's the only fight worth choosing. Not every battle needs your sword. Some just need your stillness. You're not here to react. You're here to rule yourself. That's the win they can't understand. That's the victory that doesn't need an audience. They want to pull you out of yourself. Don't let them. Your mind is a fortress. Your peace is not public property. What you allow is what continues. And what you master in silence no one can take. So walk in knowing that you are the one with the real power, because they played the game and you didn't. The invisible contract of reaction. Every time you react, you agree. Not with your words, but with your energy. That's the contract. It's not signed on paper, it's signed in impulse, in the fraction of a second between the provocation and your response. In that space, something is exchanged, and very few ever realize it happened. This contract is invisible but binding. It says, you now have access to my emotions. You now control my attention. You now determine how I feel about myself. It doesn't matter whether your reaction was to defend, to justify, to lash out, or to explain. The moment you gave your presence to what didn't deserve it, the agreement was sealed. They don't need you to agree with them. They only need you to engage, because engagement is energy, and energy is power. When you respond to disrespect, you validate it. You confirm that it has weight, that it can move you, that it deserves a piece of your mind, a slice of your peace. And the more you do it, the more you lose sight of yourself. Reaction is a form of submission. It doesn't look like it, because it comes dressed as strength. The loud voice, the quick comeback, the cutting insult. But all of it is rooted in loss of control. If you were truly centered, you wouldn't need to strike. You would observe. You would choose. You would remain the one who decides. The Stoics knew this. They didn't teach detachment to make people numb. They taught it to restore sovereignty, because nothing is more dangerous than living at the mercy of other people's behavior. When your mood rises and falls based on someone else's approval, your life is no longer yours. You've outsourced your dignity, and most people do this daily, without question. But what happens when you stop signing the contract? When you stop handing over your state to every trigger that comes knocking? At first, the world resists. People push harder. They say you've changed. They accuse you of being cold, detached, arrogant. But what they're really saying is, why doesn't this affect you anymore? And that question reveals everything. They were depending on your reaction to confirm their control. Your silence, your stillness, your decision to remain grounded. It disrupts their rhythm. It cuts the circuit. It exposes the game. Because when there's no reaction, there's no reward. And when there's no reward, the attack becomes pointless. This isn't about being passive, it's about being deliberate. You still act, but you choose when and how. You respond when it serves your principles, not your ego. You speak when your words are rooted in reason, not reactivity. You walk away not because you're weak, but because you no longer seek validation in places that offer none. The contract is always offered. Every insult, every dismissal, every attempt to provoke you is a paper placed in front of you. And every time, you have a choice. Sign it with your energy, or return it with your stillness. That's how power shifts. Not in volume, not in dominance, but in awareness. You don't owe anyone your disturbance, not even when they demand it. Especially when they demand it. The moment you learn to preserve your calm as your highest asset, everything changes. You become unpredictable. You become untouchable. You stop dancing to music that was never yours. They don't control you. They just know your triggers. And every reaction you give them sharpens their aim. But when the bullets no longer hit, when the comments no longer shake, when the games no longer matter, you become someone else. Someone they can't use. Someone they can't move. Someone who doesn't sign contracts with chaos. The architecture of inattention. You feel it before you say a word, before the moment escalates, before the tension breaks the surface. It starts in the chest. A tightness, a sudden heat in the face, a shift in the breath. You're not reacting yet, but the body is already preparing for war, and if you don't master what happens inside, everything outside will command you like a puppet. Most people think they get angry in the moment, but the truth is more dangerous than that. Anger doesn't appear suddenly. It accumulates. It builds, brick by brick, thought by thought. A micro-disrespect here, a memory from last week, a feeling that you weren't heard, weren't seen, weren't valued. That's the real construction, not of strength but of pressure. And like any structure left unchecked, it eventually collapses from the inside out. We're trained to pretend we're fine, to smile when we're tight, to say it's nothing when it's clearly something, to call it patience when in reality it's a denial of what we feel. But Stoicism doesn't ask you to suppress your emotions. It demands that you understand their architecture, because if you don't see what's building up, it will explode in places and moments that never deserved the blast. Inattention is like scaffolding. It starts invisible, supporting your beliefs, your insecurities, your past wounds. And when someone disrespects you, it doesn't just offend you in the present, it echoes through everything unresolved. That's why your reaction is so much bigger than the moment. You're not responding to one sentence, you're responding to a lifetime of being unheard. That's not presence, that's pain misidentified as personality. This is where the work begins, not in becoming less emotional, but in becoming more aware. When you feel the heat rising, stop, not to freeze, not to repress, but to look. What thought did I just believe? What fear did I just touch? What old story am I repeating in my head without questioning it? This is the moment most people skip, and it costs them everything, because when you don't observe the build-up, you become the explosion. You speak what you'll later regret. You act out of proportion. You walk away feeling like you lost something you couldn't even name. Not your temper, your center. And every time that happens, you teach your nervous system one thing. External behavior is more powerful than internal peace. That cycle must be broken, not by brute force, but by clarity. You must see disrespect as an invitation to check your structure. Where am I holding tension that doesn't belong? Where am I reacting to someone who hasn't earned the privilege to move me? This is not detachment. This is discipline. You are returning to yourself before the storm convinces you to leave. A Stoic doesn't avoid conflict. He steps into it without tension. Calm is not passivity. It's control under fire. And you only earn that calm by dismantling what's fragile inside. That means examining your triggers, looking at your patterns, questioning your narratives, training your breath not just as a function but as a tool. Your breath is the signal. When it breaks, you've already lost the first battle. You are allowed to feel, but you are not allowed to be owned by what you feel. That's the discipline. To recognize the emotion, hold it, trace its source, and then choose your response. Not from the heat, from the stillness beneath it. Disrespect will come, and it will test your structure. But if you've cleared the scaffolding, if you've made peace your foundation, nothing they say can shake you. You don't bend because someone pushes. You bend only when you choose. That is strength. That is the freedom earned in silence, built breath by breath. The myth of the final word. There's a myth we've all been fed, that the one who speaks last wins, that the final word is a trophy, that silence is surrender, and so we argue, not to resolve, but to dominate. We chase the last sentence like it's proof of superiority. But the truth is this: the need to have the last word is often the loudest form of insecurity. Why do we fight to be heard in moments where silence would serve us more? Why do we feel the urge to respond to every attack, correct every misjudgment, or justify ourselves to those who already decided not to understand us? Because deep down, we confuse reaction with dignity. We believe that if we don't defend our name, it loses value. But your worth is not held in the opinion of others. It's held in how little their opinions can move you. The last word is only valuable when it's chosen with wisdom. Most of the time, it's a reflex, a shot fired not for truth, but for ego. And ego is a poor strategist. It demands you speak, even when silence would shake the room. It pushes you to explain when the explanation only fuels the fire. It makes you trade your peace for the illusion of dominance. But there's a deeper strength, the kind that doesn't chase the last word because it doesn't need to. The kind that listens, measures, and lets things die on their own. You can feel when a person is calm not because they gave up, but because they've already won, inwardly. Their stillness isn't weakness, it's mastery. The kind that says, I don't need to correct you to be correct. I don't need to respond to stay aligned with who I am. The world is full of noise. Everyone wants to be right. Everyone wants to be louder. But noise never built anything sacred. Wisdom is quiet. It doesn't compete with ignorance. It doesn't beg to be heard. It doesn't fear being misunderstood. Why? Because it understands itself. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to prove a thing to someone trying to provoke you. That's their game, and you were not born to play games. You were born to walk in truth, and truth, by nature, doesn't shout. It stands, it endures, and it echoes long after the noise has stopped. There is power in restraint. In the moment you want to respond, but you don't. In the breath you take before saying something you'd later regret. In the decision to walk away, not because you're running, but because the ground you stand on is already solid. Let them believe they won the moment. You are playing for something higher, the kind of peace that doesn't require explanation, defense, or applause. When you withhold your reaction, you hold the mirror. You let the other person see themselves without interruption. And often, that silence is the most uncomfortable truth they've ever faced, because it reveals their noise for what it is, empty. And when your silence remains unbroken, it turns from absence to presence, from passive to powerful. The final word is not the last sentence spoken. It's the energy that lingers, and nothing lingers more deeply than calm. When they replay the moment in their mind, they won't remember what you said. They'll remember that they couldn't shake you, that their efforts fell into still water. And that's a kind of defeat they never expected. So next time someone pulls you into a battle for the last word, let them take it. Let them carry the burden of needing to be heard. You carry the strength of not needing to. The Stoics didn't conquer with noise, they conquered themselves. And in doing so, they silence the world. The alchemy of cold eyes. There is a kind of look that disarms without a word, not violent, not cruel, just still. Cold not from hatred but from mastery. It's not the cold of someone numb, it's the cold of someone who sees through the moment and refuses to be burned by it. Cold eyes are not empty, they are trained. They hold weight. And in the presence of that weight, those who seek chaos lose their balance. Most people telegraph their emotions with every glance. You can see the spark of anger before the words leave their lips. You can see the discomfort, the need to be liked, the hunger for control. And once your emotions are visible, they can be used. The world doesn't attack what's hidden, it attacks what's exposed. And if your face reacts to every jab, you've already told the other person how to beat you. Cold eyes change that. They don't beg to be understood. They don't flinch when provoked. They don't chase control, and they embody it. And in a culture of exaggerated expression, nothing feels more powerful than composure. Not apathy, not detachment. Precision, awareness without reaction. Power without display. You don't need to rehearse clever responses when your presence already speaks. Cold eyes say, "I see what you're doing, and it doesn't move me." They say, "Your disrespect is noted, but not honored." This isn't about being rude. It's about being sovereign. When your gaze holds stillness, it sends a message that words can't reach. You are not here to compete. You are here to remain. But that kind of gaze doesn't come naturally. It's forged through discomfort, through repeated restraint, through studying yourself in the moment you most want to react. It's not about being expressionless. It's about being undisturbed, to observe with precision and refuse to mirror what you see. Most people reflect chaos. You reflect silence. People don't expect that. They expect your eyes to widen when they insult you, your jaw to tighten, your pupils to shrink. These are signs of threat, and they feed the attacker. But when your face remains calm, when your eyes don't break contact yet don't engage in warfare, the aggressor begins to lose their posture. They start to feel visible, not powerful, transparent. And that's the moment things begin to shift. There is something ancient about a composed face. It reminds others of something they've lost, control. And when they stand in front of someone who hasn't lost it, the mirror becomes unbearable. That's why your gaze must be grounded, not to intimidate, but to anchor. You become a center of gravity in a world addicted to reaction. Cold eyes aren't angry, they're focused. They don't carry resentment, they carry clarity. You don't stare to overpower, you look to understand. And you choose not to respond because there's nothing there worth descending into. That's where the alchemy happens. You transform disrespect into nothing. And nothing is heavier than silence that sees. To master this, train yourself in moments that don't seem to matter. The minor irritation, the subtle disrespect, the casual test. Don't roll your eyes, don't shift your jaw, don't change your breath. Just see it and let it fall. That's the daily practice. The resistance is not outside, it's internal. Your face wants to react, let it want, and deny it. Not from suppression, from selection, because this moment doesn't deserve access. When someone looks at you and sees stillness where they expected fire, they will speak louder. They'll try harder. They'll throw everything they have to make you flinch. And when you don't, they'll feel exposed. Not because you attacked, but because you didn't need to. That's the reversal. That's the quiet authority few ever cultivate. So carry cold eyes. Not cruel, not closed, but forged. Let your presence do what your words don't need to. Be the mirror they avoid. Be the calm they fear. And remember, the one who sees clearly holds the most power. Not because he moves first, but because he doesn't need to move at all. Strategic emptiness. There is a kind of emptiness that feels dangerous. Not because it threatens, but because it refuses to react. You look at someone, expect a response, and find a void. Not a hollow shell, but something deeper, something unreadable, something untouchable. That is strategic emptiness. The power of being full of clarity and appearing empty to those who seek chaos. Most people live with their emotions written on their skin. Joy, fear, offense, insecurity, all available for the world to grab. They want to be understood. They want to be felt. They want to be validated. And in this desperate openness, they become accessible to anyone who knows how to push the right button. But there is another way, not to become invisible, but to become unreadable. Strategic emptiness is not about hiding who you are. It's about refusing to give yourself away. You become still, not because you're lost, but because you've already arrived at a place of calm that doesn't need to explain itself. You become quiet, not because you lack words, but because you no longer waste them where they will be thrown away. It's not withdrawal, it's refinement. You are no longer available for games that cost you your center. To appear empty is a weapon. It confuses those who thrive on control. They search your face for emotional cues. They wait for the shift in posture, the rise in tone, the flash of irritation. When they find nothing, they begin to doubt themselves. Their power fades, because what they wanted was your fire, and you gave them stillness. You don't need to perform calm, you need to be calm. That's the key. Pretending to be empty is a mask, but becoming empty by discipline is a transformation. You train yourself to release unnecessary thoughts, to detach from imagined insults, to reduce your dependence on outcome. You walk into the room already complete, so nothing they say can add to you, and nothing they do can take from you. In this state, you are not a wall. You are a mirror without opinion. You reflect, you observe, but you do not distort. This creates discomfort in others. They speak and receive no reaction. They attack and meet no resistance. They expect you to defend, to deny, to collapse. And when you do none of those things, they begin to drown in their own performance. Strategic emptiness is also a filter. It reveals who is worthy of your energy. Those who seek truth are drawn in. They slow down. They listen. They match your pace. But those who live off reaction grow louder, more erratic, more confused, because their power never came from strength, only from access, and you've revoked it. This emptiness is not numbness. You feel everything, but you choose what you show. You are a controlled space, a temple that doesn't allow everyone through the door. You move when movement is right. You speak when silence has said enough. You act from principle, not pressure. That is the Stoic way, to master yourself so deeply that the world no longer dictates how you show up. To the outside, you look empty, but inside, you are focused, present, immovable. And that contrast is what creates influence. Not everyone will understand it. Some will call it arrogance, others will say you lack emotion. Let them. They speak from the chaos you've already walked away from. You don't owe the world your reaction. You owe yourself your peace. So become the kind of person who no longer flinches, no longer justifies, no longer allows others to write your emotional script. Empty yourself of what they seek, the weakness they hope to exploit. Then fill yourself with something they can't touch: clarity, stillness, and a decision to remain whole in a world that profits from your fragmentation. When you become the test, at first, you are the one being tested. Your silence is provoked. Your boundaries are poked. Your self-control is questioned. They want to see how far you bend before you break. They want to see what lives behind your calm. Is it real or is it performance? They want to know if they can get to you. Because that's how most people assert power, not through wisdom but through manipulation. But something happens when you stop giving predictable answers, when your stillness doesn't shatter under pressure, when your silence remains silence, not avoidance, not weakness but presence. That's when the weight shifts. That's when you stop being the one tested and become the test itself. They speak, and you don't fill the space. They provoke, and your expression doesn't change. They question you, and you answer only what is necessary. No apology, no over-explaining, no shrinking. In that moment, you are no longer reacting to them. They are reacting to you. They are adjusting to your energy. They are trying to interpret your calm, and suddenly they're the ones out of control. This shift is not loud. It's not dramatic. It's subtle. It begins when you stop chasing validation, when you don't explain your boundaries, when you no longer fear being misunderstood by people who don't even understand themselves. You start to walk into rooms with gravity, not because you demand it, but because you carry it. People feel it. They slow down around you. They get nervous. They question their tone, not because you are intimidating, but because your presence doesn't give them the feedback they're used to. You are not mirroring their chaos. You are not reacting to their signals. You are not giving them permission to lead the rhythm. You move on your own terms. And that unsettles those who are used to controlling others through noise. Becoming the test doesn't mean becoming cold, it means becoming exact. Calm with precision, silent with reason, grounded without arrogance. And from that posture, your presence becomes a mirror. You don't expose them with your words. You let them expose themselves through their behavior. They will speak too much. They will try too hard. They will rush to fill the silence. And in that rush, they reveal their lack of composure. This is the kind of influence no title can buy. It's the kind of presence that doesn't need to be explained. It's how leaders carry themselves, how philosophers walk through storms without being drenched, not because they avoid life, but because they've mastered their reactions to it. You will notice it when people begin to measure their words around you. When the ones who used to test you now test themselves before speaking in your direction, you've become the constant in the room, the reference point, the center, and centers do not move, others move around them. This isn't dominance, it's discipline. You didn't earn it by overpowering others. You earned it by not needing to. The less you chase, the more gravity you develop. The less you explain, the more clarity you hold. The less you react, the more others reveal. You become the one who sets the tone simply by staying aligned with who you are, no matter what pressure comes. People can sense when someone has built themselves in silence. They may not understand it, but they feel it. And whether they respect it or fear it, they adjust. They either rise to meet your frequency or remove themselves entirely. Either way, you remain intact. That's the test you become, the one who no longer gets moved, and in doing so, moves everything around them. The victory that echoes in silence. The greatest victories don't come with applause. They don't end with celebration or praise. They're not visible to the world. No trophies, no headlines, just silence. And in that silence, something rare happens. The soul realigns. The war ends. Not outside, but within. You disarmed those who sought your reaction, not by overpowering them, but by refusing to be moved by them. You held your breath when others lost theirs. You stayed calm while the world flinched. And in doing so, you proved something sacred, not to them, but to yourself. The victory wasn't that they stopped disrespecting you. The victory was that you no longer needed them to stop. Their behavior didn't define your peace anymore. Their tone didn't control your state. Their words lost their grip. That's the kind of win that lasts. Because it wasn't earned through domination. It was earned through discipline. Every time you chose not to respond, you rewired yourself. You reclaimed energy that used to be wasted on battles with no reward. You broke the habit of proving your worth to people who were never worthy of your presence. You stopped chasing recognition and started standing in recognition of your own silence. And that silence, grounded, aware, deliberate, became your crown. When others try to provoke you now, they meet something different. Not a wall, not resistance, just absence. You're there but not accessible. You're listening but not pulled. You're present but not performing. That's what power feels like. A calm that can't be purchased, a dignity that doesn't beg, a peace that doesn't explain. There will be moments when you'll want to return fire, when your pride will whisper, say something, defend yourself, show them. But you'll remember, reaction is a cage. And the more you fight for respect in the noise, the further you drift from the place where true respect begins. Inside, quiet, untouched. Let others chase the last word. Let them fight for the upper hand. You are playing a different game now, one where victory is measured by what you don't let in, one where strength is defined by what you can hold without releasing, one where the echo of your self-control is louder than anything you could have said in anger. This silence is not absence. It's presence elevated. It's the calm after the storm you never entered. It's the clarity that follows restraint. And it lives in your posture, your breath, your gaze. People may not understand it, but they will feel it. It lingers in the air. It sharpens the room. It turns disrespect into dust. You've walked through this fire without burning. You've proven that peace is not found in avoiding conflict, but in standing firm through it. You didn't collapse. You didn't lose your shape. You didn't trade your values for validation, and that is rare, that is sacred. That is what Stoicism was always about, not the rejection of emotion, but the refusal to be owned by it. So carry this silence with you. Let it become your armor. Let it become your presence. You no longer react because you no longer need to. You are not above others. You are simply within yourself. And nothing outside will ever be louder than the clarity you now hold inside. If this voice resonated with something quiet in you, something calm, something rising, and subscribe. And leave a comment below, not to prove anything, but to remind yourself that silence is never empty when it comes from mastery. You've won. And the world doesn't need to know. You do, and that's enough.